got stuck here. But, here, let me go ahead and
get live at 11 o'clock.
Yep. Let's. Get Sherbanu. Can you send this link out to those same people? Is that possible?
Which people?
The same people you sent the link out to originally?
There are too many people. We've sent it on the different websites.
Okay.
That's going to be a nightmare.
Publish. Because this original one, it's glitching here.
So what we basically put, can you read out that link to for people to get on this?
I can try to. It got stuck, so I had to create a new one. This is a different one. Can I share that over to you guys? Yeah, let me try to do that.
You can link it to the other one. That's the only solution I can think of. Because otherwise we'll have an issue. See, because we put it on HIC website, we put it on Hey, we put it in New York. So everybody's looking at that link, and how do I get hold of all those people?
Understood.
Check. 1, 2, check. 1, 2. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Check. 1, 2, 1, 2, check. 1, 2, check. 1, 1. 1, 1, 1, 2, check.
Hey. It's so that first link. So that first, it's right there. No, this is the first one right here.
Yeah.
This is the first one.
Yeah.
It's just kind of glitching. It's not.
So do you have
the
a
video.
new one?
I do have a new one.
That works?
Yes, it works exactly.
Okay, what is it? Can you text it to me?
Yep, I can. Give me one moment. Close. sure. Copy link
So the other one doesn't work for sure.
for sure. Yeah, can you actually? Yeah, if you can forward all of that like ASAP for me,
yeah,
please.
sure.
That's the new link.
Okay.
Sorry. And then I'm gonna create a new design here as well.
He's just changing the YouTube. Give it like
We had to
3 minutes.
create a new,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yep.
Is it live now?
Yeah, there's a
It
new
is,
one.
but there's a new link.
It's coming in.
Uh,
new link now?
please go
I'm just
to
sending it to everybody.
channel
New link now?
and click
What's the new link? Send me.
new
Yes,
link.
already.
Marhuma plan?
Sure.
Okay, there we go.
You send the dots.
That should have
Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened.
happened. The number.
518 669 8080. WhatsApp માં મોકલાવે છે?
What's that?
Fine. Yeah, you send to some other people, you know.
Okay, and I changed the original cover. I changed it on the original one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Send.
Yes, you should have it. Okay, as long as the cover works, that's fine.
Nothing.
So on the original one, I put please go to channel and click new link, and I put the link there. Check it out.
Yeah, there. So you put in the old one.
I
Too.
put in the old
Okay,
one. Yep.
good too. All right.
So the old one they do it won't work then, huh?
Yeah, because look, it's all it's doing is this. It's just
Oh,
loading.
yeah.
Yeah. But the new one is good to go.
Link change.
I know.
The new link now.
So I went to the old one, and here, check it out. I added that.
Perfect.
Please
That's
go
all
to channel and click new link.
perfect. That's
Okay.
all it is.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not sure technology.
No.
Yeah.
As long as you got
There's
it,
a new-
now it's
there's a
okay.
new
We're ready to
Yeah,
start.
yeah. So you're good here, and I have some here. So we already have 2 people on this.
Okay,
right?
good. Tariq. Give me that. Who's got the mic here?
The audio guy. Really? Yeah, I know. How are you? Where did you meet her? As usual, it's either Publix or Abu Bakar, right? Yeah. I will remind
Brothers
you.
and sisters, we request you all to be seated, take your place. We are starting the program now. Please, Hassan. Brothers and sisters, we are starting the program now, and there's a request to put your phones on silent mode. Please, Hassan.
No, you got to go forward. Right there. Yep, right there.
In the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Assalamu alaikum to you all. For our other attendees, that means peace be upon you, which we wish for all attendees today. We thank you all for making it out tonight. This morning. Taking time out of your schedule really means a lot to us. The individual that we are commemorating today, her name is Marhum Sherbanu Mustafa Jaffer. And the reason we use Marhum in the beginning of her name is because that means when God showers mercy upon her. So we're hoping that our prayers for her today and remembering her after 40 days after her pass will be remembered as long as we live in, God willing. We'll go ahead and start with our first Sadiq Jaffer. He's the son of the Marhum, or the lady that we're remembering today. So he's going to be reciting Surah Yasin. It's a passage from the Holy Quran which brings about serenity in the soul.
Thank you, Sayyid. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشرهم بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثل أصحاب القرية إذ جاء المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فأبلغنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم ولمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني آمنت بربكم فاسمعوا جنة قال يا غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على كوني من بعده من جند من المنزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتي من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كما أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملت أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض من أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلهم منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى ذاك الأرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر وليل السابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أن حملنا ذرية في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومطاعا إلهي وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم انفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا ما هذا الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواج في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أهد إليكم يا بني آدم لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد ضل منكم جبلا كثيرا فلم تكونوا تاكلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نحكم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانة فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمر ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يأكلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللنا لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يروا الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقا قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحيي الذي أنشاها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأحزر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. سورة مبارك الفاتحة.
Just recited is actually Surah Yasin. And in this passage, which he recited in Arabic, it's described as the key to good, all in this life and the hereafter, and safety from all evil in this life and in the hereafter. Needs are fulfilled if asked after the recitation of this passage. The reward of its recitation is of high merit. Next, we will have a recitation by Shabir Mustafa. He's going to be reciting a Marshia, which in English is a sort of a lamentation, and it's going to be in the language of Urdu. So it's an Indian dialect, and I hope we all can appreciate it. So go ahead.
محمد صلوات. शहर में शाह ज़मन ख़त्मा विदा उजड़ा हुआ ले चले हो गए 40 दिन मारे आशिके गफ्फार का हाय ये 40वां छूटे जाते हैं अपने वतन करते हुए मर गए अब्बास अली मार बाजू कटाने पर शेखे अलदार हाय चालीस इमामत का गुल अकबरे काजी हुआ उस गुले गुलजार का आज है 40वां तीर से मारा गया असगरे मासूम टकले उसमें अनवार का हाय 40वां महले सब है खरी सिर्फ ये इंतजार आओ अल्लाह निशान और करो हमको समा बैलिए ज़ैनब कथा करबो बला भाई को सुबात में करो बला वास्ता ईश्वर दई करबला बारिलाह वास्ते जनाब ज़ैनब का जिस मरहुमा की ये मंजिस की गई है बारिलाह मरहुमा के गुनाहों को माफ कर बारिलाह मरहुमा को जन्नत नसीब अल्फातिहा
Thank you, Shabir. The Marhuma who we're remembering today, whenever Shabir would recite, it would bring a lot of joy to our heart. So we spirit, which is with us today, takes a lot of joy in him reciting and lamentation behind commemorating the Khalima Muhammad. That's what he was doing in that lamentation. We'll go ahead and then move forward with their English lecture or sort of a few words that Shabir Kermani is going to be presenting today. He'll be sharing a few words with us.
Should we please recite the Surah Al-Fatiha for the departed soul, the good departed, Marhuma Sherbanu, Mustafa, Jaffer, Al-Fatiha. Sing. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وفوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين لهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل يقول رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي أما بعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقضى ربك ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه وبالوالدين إحسانا صدق الله العلي العظيم زينوا مجالسكم بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam and in faith and in humanity, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're facing a tight timeline, we're facing rain before us, so I'm going to keep this very succinct and try to get the message across. We have people from different faiths, different backgrounds, and the message that I'm told is going globally. We're told there's a moment in time where Musa, or Moses, peace be upon him, the holy prophet of God, he has a conversation with God, and in this conversation, he comes to a point in time where he says, God, I want to know my neighbor in paradise. Who will be my neighbor in Jannah, in paradise? And at that point in time, God says, Moses, go to this location, and you will find your neighbor in paradise. At that point in time, Moses is attributed to have gone to that particular location. He went to a marketplace, a bazaar, and when he got there at that point in time, he found that he was at a butcher shop, a butchery. And he thought to himself that perhaps I'm at the wrong location, I'm at the wrong view. And at that point in time, he observes what's going on, and this butcher is doing his tasks. And when he begins to close up the shop for the night or the day, when he begins to close up at that point in time, he begins to close everything and he goes back towards his home. When he goes back towards his home, Moses follows him, Musa follows him, and when he follows him, you get the feeling that someone's following you. And at that point in time, when he begins to follow him, the butcher notices this and he turns around and he notices someone following him. And he says at that point in time that, what is the meaning of this? And then Moses, who has not identified himself at that point in time, and he doesn't know it is Moses, he says, look, will you have a guest in your house tonight? Will you have someone who will join you for dinner tonight? And at that time, it was customary that people would accept this. And at that point in time, he entered and he accepted and he came to the house. When they came to the house, according to this narration that is found in Islamic principles, at that point in time, the butcher says to his guest, he says, my guest, please have a seat. I'll come to you in a moment. And at that point in time, he goes into the kitchen. And when he goes into the kitchen, as we would call it, he then prepares a soup, as we would call it. He prepares the soup. And at that point in time, he then takes out 3 bowls and fills them. He takes one bowl and puts it in front of his guest, who is Moses, who he doesn't know is Moses at that point in time. And then at that point in time, another bowl, and he takes the 3rd bowl. In the 3rd bowl, he begins to break pieces of bread. When he begins to break these pieces of bread, he lets them soak for a moment. As they're soaking for a moment, Moses is watching this scene, and he's trying to understand what's happening before his eyes. And when he's watching this before his eyes at that point in time, he notices that this butcher then goes up to the loft area. When he goes up to the loft area of his house, an elevated plane up some stairs, at that point in time, he takes out what we would perhaps call a large basket-like object, and he brings it down the stairs. When he brings it down the stairs, Moses is watching this whole scene. When he's looking at this scene, this butcher now takes that cup of soup that he had taken with the piece of bread, and he takes it and he begins to take piece after piece, morsel after morsel, and extends it towards the basket. Moses cannot see what is in the basket. At that point in time, 1 piece and 2 pieces and 3 pieces, up until the point that the cup has finished. At that point in time, this butcher takes the large basket, puts it back up in the loft, comes downstairs, takes the other bowl of soup, and he goes directly to Moses, his guest, who he doesn't know is Moses at that time. And he says, my guest, I am here with you. I apologize for the delay. And he says, look, can I explain? Can I understand from you? Moses says, you're my host. Can you please explain to me? What did I just observe? What did I just see? And he says at that point in time, he said, yes, this was the cause of the delay. He says that this basket that I have, in it lives my incapacitated mother. She can no longer move. And I feed her every single day when I come home. And he said that at that point in time, Moses, who has not revealed his identity, he stops. He says, look, I have a question for you. I understand now. You look after her. You take care of her. You feed her every time you come home, every single day. However, there was a moment in time that I noticed that you were feeding a morsel to your mother and you put your ear towards the basket and then you removed your ear and you. He said, yes, this is a joke between me and my mother. He said, what's the joke? And Moses says, he says, the joke between me and my mother is every time I do this for her, she tells me, my son, come closer. And I bring my ear closer to her. And then she says something to me. What does she say? She says, my son, may God make you Moses' neighbor in paradise. At that point in time, Moses says that this is not a joke because God sent me to come find you because I asked him who's my neighbor in paradise and he told me that that is reality, that the prayers and the dua of your mother have been accepted to the point that God has told me you are my neighbor. The point being here that us as a society, we may have been lapsing and not understood the position of mothers in society at large. In this very brief moments that we have together fighting the rain, I want to try to get us all to a common ground to understand the position of mothers in society and how vital they are. A mother we have come to commemorate tonight or today, in this day, we have all gathered here to commemorate. What is the position? I want to look at a few things. What was the view of mothers within universal principles of society, regardless of religion, above religion? What was the view of mothers when it came to Hinduism, when it came to Judaism, when it came to Christianity, when it came to other major faiths of the world? Did they have reverence for mothers? And if so, how did they? At the third level, what has happened to our society in terms of the position of mothers? Have we understood it, or is it perhaps slipping? At the fourth level, we'll look at, in Islam, what is the view of mothers and how vital and important and pivotal are they? And finally, we will conclude with the remembrance of the mothers of Karbala, those who sacrificed, inshallah. This is our agenda for the brief moments that we are together. Wherever you are, here in Florida or wherever my voice is reaching, from the bottom of your hearts, and salawat on Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. At the first level, the concept of mothers is something that was universally accepted and is universally accepted. I remind you, Abraham Lincoln, who was the 15th president of the United States, the one who was the president during the Civil War, perhaps one of the most difficult times in the history of America from 1861 to 1865, he's on the record as saying that I never forgot the prayers of my mother. They clung onto me wherever I went. That is, this is not someone who's necessarily saying this from a religious perspective, but the concept that mother's prayer is what allows someone and enables someone to succeed. Furthermore, in our society, which has become increasingly globally, from the east to the west, from the north to the south, which has increasingly become more and more materialistic, there's an outlet. Every single year I see this. There are outlets that try to put a numeric value on how much would be the compensation of a mother if we were to try to compensate a mother in economic terms. And the most recent one that I saw was just during COVID from salary.com. And every year I notice with adjusted inflation, the numbers keep going up and up. What is the number? The idea that if a mother, and especially in COVID, researchers have found that mothers are spending 96 hours at a minimum looking after their kids, if not 117 hours, just looking after their kids. And salary.com said if we were to try to give the fair wage or salary for a mother in America in 2022, we'd have to be paying $185,000 a year. Of course, as a society, how do you put a number on motherhood? There's no price on motherhood, it's priceless. But the idea is that we sometimes as a society undervalue the position of mothers because in economic terms, it may not be something that we're accustomed to or attuned to. Moving further than this, when we come to world religions, you will find that parents in particular, and in particular mothers, have been revered by societies no matter what. And sometimes this is an issue of perspective. Allow me to explain. In Hindu mythology, I've not even come to Islam, in Judaic religious beliefs, within Christian beliefs, within philosophy, you will find, even away from religion, that parents have been respected. You may say who? For example, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. These are the three great Greek philosophers, not religious necessarily. Socrates, as you know, he didn't write. Plato wrote, his disciple. Plato came forward and said that a man must pay, man in the general sense, a man must pay the first, the oldest, and the greatest debt. And which one is that? That is the debt that one owes to their parents. How must he pay it? He says that he must pay it first through his wealth, through his body, and through his spirit. Wealth meaning that if you have food, you need to make sure they have food. You need to make sure that they have shelter, if you have shelter. And you need to make sure that you pay them with your body. Sometimes our parents get elderly and they're not able to lift things. They're not able to do things physically that we are able to. We need to help them there. And finally with spirit, and this is what Plato says. With spirit meaning sometimes in our world, we don't have time to pick up the phone and call our loved ones. We don't have time to talk to our loved ones. Do you know that according to hospice research, people in their final moments, what is the biggest regret in America on people's deathbeds? It's not that I wish I had this car, I wish I had this house, I wish I had invested in this stock, I wish I had paid this, I wish I had gained this. The number one regret that people have on their deathbed in America is, I wish I spent more time with my family. I wish I spent time with my children. I miss their childhood. I miss my parents. I miss the ones who are most important in my life. That's the biggest regret that people have on their lives. They don't think about that TV that could have been a few inches bigger. What are our priorities in life? It's something that we need to really think about. Further than this, Aristotle, Aristu, as we call him in the Islamic tradition, Aristotle came forward and said that a man must himself make sure that he goes hungry before he sees his parents go hungry. He must go without clothes before his parents go without clothes. He must go without shelter before his parents go without shelter. That is, do we understand these universal concepts? Furthermore, in Hinduism you will find there are different mythologies in the north and the south and the east and the west, depending on what region you're in. One of the gods within Hinduism is known as Ganesha. Their view. Ganesha is having a conversation with his sibling, his brother. His brother is much more physically built than him. He's smaller. At that point in time, they're having a conversation. Let's have a conversation and let's say, who can run around the world as fast as possible? Who can run around and race around the world as fast as possible? So the the bigger, stronger one says, I can go around Earth faster than you. So let's race. He said, very well. So the big one, he goes around once and twice and three times he goes around Earth and then he comes back. He finds Ganesha standing right there, and next to Ganesha are his parents. And the big one, strong one says, I won. I won because I went around Earth 3 times and then you were just sitting here. And Ganesha says, no, I won. He says, how? He says, look, you went around the world once, twice, 3 times. He said, while you went around the world 3 times, I stayed here and I went around my parents 3 times. He said, you went around the world, I went around my world. What matters more? An issue of perspective that we need to consider in our lives. What is our priority? Am I sitting around trying to make other people who I may not even like happy in life? And am I forgetting my priority at home, which is the most important element of my equation? Further than this, Judaism, you will find that within Judaism, you will find the 10 commandments. And the first commandment, which is conditional according to Judaic scholars, is that commandment says, honor thy parents. And if you do that, what's the promise of God? You will live long in the earth. There's a lot of study, I wish I had time, that if you want to live longer in life, the world is trying to find the fountain of youth to live forever. If you want to live longer, if you want to live, the most important element of the equation is to build your family ties. There is dozens of papers. I'm an academic by training, and I can tell you how much research is on this front of looking after your family relations, which we call in Islam, to look after the womb relatives. If you want to live longer, that's the secret to life. If we have time, I'll try to give you some research on that. Further than this, in Christianity, of course, the position of parents, but especially the position of mothers. Maryam alayhi salam, who is mentioned more in the Quran than she's in the Bible, that the mother of Isa, Jesus, peace be upon him, is one of the most exalted positions. I wish I would have the time, I would give a whole hour lecture on the position of Mary within Islam and mothers in particular. Coming to Islam, the verse that I recited at the beginning, God Almighty says, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. In the holy book of the Quran, God says, and I enjoin on you and I command upon you that you do not worship anyone except me. God is saying, don't worship anyone except me. And right in the same breath he says, and do good to your parents. The commentators of the Quran, when they talk about this, they said, how is it that God on one side is saying, I command you not to worship anyone except me, and do good to your parents? It is as if, the commentators say, it is as if God is saying that you are not allowed to worship anyone except me, God the one. But, if I were to give you the permission to worship anyone except me, it would have been your parents. Because divine attributes are manifested through parents in our life. For example, the mercy of God. The Arabic word, which is similar actually to the Hebrew word for the womb, is rahim. Rahim is literally from the mercy of God. That is, the root word is common amongst them. Therefore, the womb of the mother is a divine manifestation of God's mercy on earth, which you and I need to think and contemplate on. Further than this, The fifth Imam, Imam al-Baqir, is on the record saying, a man comes to the Imam and he says, Yabna Rasulillah, I'm having big problems in my life. I'm having big difficulties in my life. He says, tell me something, is your father alive? He said, no, my father passed away some years ago. He says, is your mother alive? He says, my mother passed away 3 months ago. The Imam looks back at him and says, look, these problems that are coming in your life, they're happening because of your mother. Because of my mother? What do you mean? He says, not because of your mother in that sense that you're thinking. In the sense that the fact that she's no longer here, these difficulties are coming in your life. So meaning what? Meaning that when she was alive, she was praying for you, and her prayer was acting as a shield that was protecting you from those difficulties which are now coming into your life. Echoing the words which Abraham Lincoln had said. That is the prayer of the mother was shielding you throughout your life. Now that she is no longer there, those difficulties are coming because her prayer's shield is no longer there. That's why God told Musa alayhi salam, Musa, walk on the earth carefully now. Moses says, my Lord, why shall I walk carefully on the earth now? He says, walk carefully on the earth right now because your mother is no longer on the earth. Jochebed, who is known in the Bible as we know her, the mother of Musa alayhi salam, the sacrificial mother. Which mother? Who she put her child into the river. A question that comes forward here. Does God do wahi? Does he do inspiration on anyone other than a prophet or not? And the answer comes clearly and categorically here. At that point in time, the Quran says, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ مُوسَى. We inspired the mother of Musa. Why? To release the child into the river. Because Moses was living in the time of Pharaoh and Fir'aun. Fir'aun was committing infanticide and killing children in alternative years, male children in alternative years. He was killing them because he knew there was a prophecy that was going to come at the end. But Allah's plan, God's plan, was to have Moses grow up in that same house. Nonetheless, I'm leaving everything. There's a lot to be said. Mothers are something that we need to cherish. It's a mother's love that gives a child, gives a human being, gives compassion. A man asked Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli, he was asked, 124,000 prophets that God sent, all of them males, why not female? He responds, because God made them mothers, and that's equivalent. Mothers give rise to prophets. The prophets would not be there had it not been for their mothers and the task that they did in raising them and giving rise to them in their life. A man comes to the sixth Imam, he says, Yabna Rasulillah, I served my mother for 20 years. I put her on my back, I took her to Hajj, I took her to pilgrimage, I fed her. She didn't have teeth, I used to chew the food and give her food. 20 years. So have I done her right? Have I given back to her what she did for me? Imam looks back and says, you have not even done 1 year of the service that she has done for you. Not even 1 year for the 20. He says, what? 20 years? 1 year? What are you talking about? He says, no. He says, you have not even given her the right of 1 night of the pangs of labor that she had looking after you. That 20 years doesn't even amount to that. He says, why? He got upset. He said, 20 years versus 1 night. He says, the issue is the difference is in the intention. So what's the difference in the intention? So when you were feeding her, when you were looking after her, when you were clothing her, you had the vision and the image of her death in front of your eyes. You had the images of her imminent death, her grave in front of your eyes. Whereas when she was feeding you, she was clothing you, and she was looking after you, she was feeding you and she was praying for your life. She was praying that you would live. You were praying and seeing that she was not going to be around. There's a big difference in these two elements of the equation. Finally, in a message that I want to give, Marhuma Sherbanu was someone who was blessed. She had a lot of blessings in her life to the extent that the love and outpouring that came out from all over, from 4 corners of the world, from the north to the south, to the east to the west, and the environment in which I wish I had at the time, in which Allah made the arrangements for her burial, passing away in a place like Costa Rica, where perhaps she was away from family, although she had her family there. But it's not the most easy way. And the arrangements that were made for her to come back, some lessons for you and I to derive. We should learn from the lives of mu'mineen and mu'minat. What are the lessons that you and I can derive? One element of the equation is that as she lived her life, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala improved her standard of living, she improved her standard of giving. She raised it and she began to give more and more to people. This is a lesson for you and I. Giving may not necessarily be financial only. It could be in terms of our time, our generosity, and other elements of the equation. Number one. Number two, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed that the act of goodness that one does in their life, it pays dividends in this world. The akhirah is the akhirah, but in this world. Perhaps how were the arrangements made of her burial and her ghusl and kafan that were made at that point in time? in a place like that. I was told that 2 hours away, there were some people who had gone to the hawza that they had endowed across the earth in Qom. These are things that pay dividends in life. Remember one thing, we have a very short time on this planet. Make the most of it. Remember this is the most vital element. Their whole lives protecting and shielding their children from others and protecting and shielding them from the difficulties of the world. Why am I saying this? Because the take-home message for you and I today is this. We sometimes see our mothers spending their whole lives protecting the child, shielding the child, but sometimes the difficulties come out within the own house. I've lectured on 4 continents. I remember, I won't mention where. I was in Asia, and there were 2 brothers from our community who were fighting one another. The one who fought the case was a lawyer fighting against his own brother. This environment, imagine what goes through the heart of it, and I'm giving this message globally, wherever this is reaching, Africa, India, and beyond. Everywhere I see this happening. And at the end of the world, at the end of the day, you'll have that regret at the end of your life. That mother who spent her whole life trying to keep the kids together, perhaps the worst thing that can go over her heart is that kids split afterwards. I remind you, 2 brothers, never forget this. 2 brothers. One was famous, one was unknown. One brother is in France, he's sick, he's ill, he's dying in his final moments. You can check the pages of history. He's dying, he's in his final moments. The other brother is very wealthy, very well known. He's not in France with his brother. His brother's dying, and when his brother dies in France, the next day all the newspapers say the same headline. And the brother who's alive reads this headline. And the headline reads, "The merchant of death has died." What happened? The newspapers made a mix-up. The newspapers made a mistake. They thought the brother that has died was the brother who had lived. They flip-flopped the brothers. The brother who died was not famous. The brother who died was not known. The one who lived and read the headline was known and famous. Who was the one who lived? The one who lived was known as Alfred Nobel. And Alfred Nobel was a chemist who made his money through TNT and dynamite. And he said that this is how I'm going to die. He had the shock of a lifetime, a shock that we often don't have during our lives. We often don't realize this. It happens after we die. But he experienced it while he was alive. That he said, if I die today, I will be remembered as someone who profited off of other people's death. That's my legacy. That next day, he established what we now call the Nobel Prize, which is given in economics and sciences and other fields, because he had that awakening moment. Do you and I awaken or not? Sometimes we don't. That line, final point that I'm concluding here, that line that is the commandment of the 10 commandments, honor thy parents so you may live in the long in the land. Remember this, the Rosetta effect. It's well documented in psychology, in sociology, and in cardiology. What does the Rosetta effect say? In the 1950s and 1960s in America, a community called Roseto, Pennsylvania. I've lectured there. Allentown is roughly 40 minutes away from there. In Roseto, Pennsylvania, it was a community of immigrants from Italy. They came from Italy, and they had half the rate of cardiovascular disease compared to the rest of the United States. And at that point in time, the cardiologist said, what is it about them? Why is it that they have such a low rate of cardiovascular disease? And they said they must eat healthy, they must not smoke, they must not eat fat. And when they looked at the data, they found that they all smoked lard, they all ate lard, and they all smoked cigars. So what's going on here? So they went into the town, they went into the city. And when they went into the town, they went in the city, they found that these people had brought their customs from Roseto, Italy, to Roseto, Pennsylvania. And every night they would all come in that backyard and they would cook in major big pots, and they would all eat together and they would all sit at the table together. Long story short, the cardiologist concluded that their socio-psychological dynamics were causing them to live longer. They had a sense of community, they had a sense of family, which allowed them to live longer. Loneliness in America has doubled over the last 50 years, 100% increase. Family is one of the most vital and the most pivotal elements of the equation, my dear brothers and sisters. Make amends before you die. Make amends between siblings. Make amends between friends. Make amends before you leave. Because at the end of your life, you will realize that didn't matter. And the damage may be perpetual throughout life. We turn our hearts and our minds to Karbala, those mothers of Karbala who sacrificed. Karbala was that plains and that plain and that land where the grandson of the Holy Prophet of Islam went and gave the ultimate sacrifice. One of those mothers who was there on the plains of Karbala, according to the narrations, was Rabab. Rabab was the mother of a 6-month-old child, and she was the mother of a 4-year-old daughter, and she was the wife of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. The narrations say that she gave everything to Karbala. जाने उसको इन अशकों से किस बला का प्यार है रोज एक रुमाल लेके हर मजलिस में आ जाती है माँ फातिमा ज़हरा is in this majlis at this point in time. इसको बस एक माँ समझा सकती है रबाब खस्ततान किस तरह बिन दूध के बच्चे को बहलाती है माँ. This is Rabab, the one who did not have milk herself to give her child. How did she silence her child who's crying at 6-month-old? The narrations say at that point when she came back from Kufa and Sham, and she came back on the 40th. We are here to commemorate the 40th of the Marhuma. When Rabab came back on the 40th, according to the narrations, she did not go to any of the graves. She went to the grave of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And when she went to the grave of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, the narrations say she just stood above the grave and she said, my husband, one child is here in Karbala, one child is in Sham, in Damascus, and you are here. I have nothing to go back to in Medina. At that point in time, when this happened, according to the narrations, she said, my husband, I have a promise to you, and that promise is I will never go in the shade as long as I'm alive. And my second promise is that I will never drink cold water after you. At that point in time, the narrations say only 6 months after they got to Medina, she passed away. She left this world. We're told when they got back, final 2 minutes, when they got back, at that point in time, Abu Hamza Thumali, whose dua we recite in Ramadan, dua Abu Hamza Thumali, Abu Hamza Thumali, he said, I came to the house of Imam Sajjad and I went through the courtyard of his house. When I went through the courtyard of his house, I saw a lady who was wearing full hijab. She was in the sahan. There was no shade above her. I went and I sat a long time with Imam Sajjad. After many hours, I got up and I came back out. And when I went through the courtyard again, I saw the same lady was sitting in the sun, but she had moved herself because now the shade and the sun had flipped. And she went back where the sun was. She moved herself and I saw her. Then I went back to the Imam and I said, Yabna Rasulullah, it seems that you have a servant and this lady, she is sitting in the heat. Maybe you have punished her. Maybe you have given her some punishment. She has done something wrong that she's sitting in the heat. The heat is too much. I beg of you, allow her to come into the shade. Imam began to cry. He said, oh Abu Hamza Thamali, this is my mother Rabab. This is the mother of my brother Ali Asghar, the mother of Sakina. She is not my servant. She promised that she would never go into the shade. The narrations say at that point in time, when there came the moment when Zainab and Imam Sajjad said that go into the shade, she went into the shade, and at that point in time she said, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Azadar do jumle aur zahmat tamam. दुआएं मांगिए. क्या कहते हैं, जब बीबी को साय में ले गई, बीबी की रूह परवाज कर गई, पता नहीं क्या नजर आया होगा. शायद सकीना की याद आई होगी, शायद अली असगर की याद आई होगी. रिवायतों में मिलता है जब शाम गरीबा, आखिरी रिवायत, जब शाम गरीबा को सारे शुहदा के सर नौ के सिना पर थे, एक मरहला ये आया कि ऑफिसर साहब ने कहा कि मुझे सारे सर चाहिए. एक बंदे ने कहा, एक शख्स ने कहा, एक लाइन ने कहा कि मैंने देखा कि हुसैन ने उसके 6 महीने वाले असगर को दफन किया था पुश्ते खैमा पर. ऑफिसर साहब ने कहा मैं इनाम दूंगा. बीबी रबाब ने क्या देखा कि अशकिया अपने नेज़े जमीन में गाड़ने लगे. एक मादर खैमा पे खड़ी थी का खुदा बंदा मेरे बच्चे की खैर हो. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Allah, we ask you to accept this love. Allah, we ask you to alleviate the suffering in our world. Allah, bring peace to Ukraine. Allah, bring peace to Afghanistan and Iraq and other places of the world wherever there is need for peace. Ya Allah, bring prosperity to the United States and the world beyond in terms of economics and other elements of the equation. Ya Allah, hasten the repentance of our Sabbath Suleiman and Allah's goodness companions. The final request Please recite the Surah Al-Fatiha for Marhuma Sherbanu, Mustafa, Jaffer, and as well for your Marhuma for all those who have seen the Surah Al-Fatiha. Surah Al-Fatiha, Ma'as-salawat.
Thank you, Shabir, for words talking about the importance of mothers, the importance of family, and sharing the story how the Marhuma's burial arrangements were partly aided by a charitable act by her husband, Marhum Mustafa Jaffer, before he passed. It was sort of interconnected how they done a charitable action to those individuals who helped prepare her burial arrangements in Costa Rica. Next, we'll have another lamentation by Shabir Mustafa, again in Urdu.
सितारों बहन हाफिज़े खुदा ये सुना था जनाब ज़ैना जाने की तैयार हुई और कब्र इमाम हुसैन पर रो रो कर कहने लगी अरे भैया हुसैन क्या बेनसीब ये नवासी रसूल की जिसकी मुशावरी भी न तूने कबूल की फिर जनाब ज़ैना जाने की तैयार हुई एक मर्तबा ज़मीन करबला से मुखातिब होकर यूं बरसिया पढ़ने लगी ऐ ज़मीन करबला ऐ करबला ऐ सैयादे दिल गिर अलविदा ऐ कब्र इब्ने साहिब नतीर अलविदा ऐ खत लगा ऐ हज़रत शबीर अलविदा ऐ भाई जान जाती मबशीर अलविदा
Thanks for the process of the last 40 days. Next, we'll have a speech by Sherbanu Jaffer's son, Hamid Jaffer.
Dear family members and friends, Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. On behalf of the Jaffer family, we thank everyone who has taken the time to attend the program in person. Ma, all I am or ever hope to be, I owe it to you. To the world, you are a mother, but to our family, you are our own. I grew so accustomed to sharing meals, watching TV, traveling, and going out for dinners with you that I feel lost without your presence around me. I cannot fathom how to live my life without you. My mother was the bone of my spine, keeping me straight and true. She was my blood, making sure it runs rich and strong. She was the beating of my heart. I cannot now imagine life without her. Everything I am, she helped me to be. Acceptance, tolerance, bravery, compassion, and humility. These are the things my mom taught me. Mom, I realized that your loss and absence left a big vacuum in my life and decided to explore why mothers are so special. And I came across the following anecdotes that I'd like to share with all of you. Ma, the most beautiful word on the lips of mankind. A mother is your first friend, your best friend, your forever friend. Mother, that was the bank where we deposited all our hearts, all our hurts and worries. Mother is the heartbeat in the home, and without her, there seems to be no heartbeat. Mother can look to our child's eyes and see tomorrow. The influence of a mother in the lives of her children is beyond calculation. A mother's hug lasts long after she lets go. Mothers are a walking miracle. God created mothers because He could not present everywhere. He could not be present everywhere. Mothers are special because they are on the extension of God. They work around the clock without any complaints to keep us happy. The loveliest masterpiece by God is the extremely kind heart of a mother. And finally, if love is as sweet as a flower, then my mother was a sweet flower of love. Mom, you will be missed forever. I cherish the special bond we had for one another and will aspire to fulfill all my commitments to you. Finally, I would like to recognize Brother Akil Asaria and his brother Arif. Akil was extremely instrumental in assisting me to get my mother's casket on a flight within 48 hours. And I must say that my mother and Akil developed a bond like a mother and a son. Likewise, I'd like to thank the HIC Orlando Jamaat management as well as Junior, Lucky Abdul Hussain, for assisting in facilitating a smooth career for my beloved mother at the Orlando Memorial Garden close to her mother. I would end with a request for Surah Fatiha for Marhum Sherbanu Mustafa Jaffer and all Marhums and Marhumins al Fatiha.
Thank you. If you can all request everyone to stand up and face this direction. The grandson of the Marhuma is going to be reciting the ziyarat of Imam Hussein.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد السلام عليك يا ابا عبد الله السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله السلام عليك يا خيرة الله وابن خيرته السلام عليك يا ابن امير المؤمنين وابن سيد المرسلين السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين السلام عليك يا ثار الله والمكارم والذكر الموجود السلام عليك وعلى الله الذي أنت ذكرها وإليك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت بقي من الله يا أبا عبد الله لقد ظلمت العزية وجنات عظمة مصيبتك بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام وجنات عظمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات فلعن الله أمتنا التي أسست الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت ولعن الله أمتها التي أتتم أمكم الكرام وأزالتكم عن مغالبكم التي ذكركم الله فيها ولعن الله أمة قتلتهم ولعن الله الممثلين لهم بالتنقيل من قتالكم ورجعت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشيائهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم يا أبا عبد الله إني سر لمن سألكم وقرب لمن هاربكم إلى يوم القيامة ولعن الله آل زياد وآل مروان ولعن الله بني أمية قاطبة ولعن الله ابن مرجان ولعن الله ابن سعد ولعن الله الشمال ولعن الله أمتها الأسرجات وعنزمات وتلقبت بقتاله بأبيه أنت وأمي لقد أدنى مصابي بك فأسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني درجة ذلك مع إمام من سور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله اللهم اجعل لي عندك وجيها بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة يا أبا عبد الله إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتلك ونبذ الأنهار وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم وأدعو إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه الدنيا وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشيائكم بركة إلى الله وإليكم منهم وأتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحرب وبالبراءة من أشيائهم وأتباعهم إني سلمت رسالتكم وخلق لمن حاربكم ووليا لمن والاكم وعدوا لمن آذاكم وأسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة وأن يثبتني إنكم قد وصلتم في الدنيا والآخرة وأسأل الله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله وأن يرزقني بالمقام مع إمام هدى ظاهر نافع بالحق منكم وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابي بكم أفضل ما يعطي مصابا بمصيبتي ما أعظمها وأعظم عطيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد اللهم إن هذا يوم تفرقت به بنو أمية وابن آخرة الأخبار الذين ابن العين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وقع فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبد العابدين وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان وقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه اللهم وضعت عليهم اللعنة منك والعذاب الأليم اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي ملوك في هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه السلام اللهم اللعن الظالم بين محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابعين على ذلك اللهم اللعن اللهم الإسلامة التي جاهدت الخير وجاهدت الظالمة تابعا على حسبه اللهم العنه بشره السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بسلام عليك عليكم مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقي وبقي الليل والنهار وجعله الله آخر الأنبياء السلام على المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحابه. اللهم قص أنت أول الظالمين باللعن مني والكاذب أذن الحمل لعنة الثانية والثالثة والرابعة. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا والأمر غير الله بن زياد والمرجان وعمر بن سعد وشرها وعلى أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آله في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وأين تسكنك وتتوسع وتوفيق وسلام. سورة المباركة الفاتحة. Once again, on behalf of Jaffer family, I'd like to extend our profound appreciation to each one of you for gracing your personal attendance today. May God reward you accordingly. Please stay safe and continue to be blessed. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Good, how are you? Sounds good. No problem.
Okay.
No problem. How was your birthday?
It was good.
Good.
We celebrate for a whole week.
Good. Assalamu alaikum.
How are you?
Good, how are you? Good to see you. How is everything? Good. Great.